Normally when we test a boat on motorboat and yachting, we're limited by time or location to a few hours on the boat. So we go out, we take everything we need to in terms of photographs, we get the performance figures, we throw it around a bit, we push it over some waves and get a good view of the boat. But this time we're going to try something a little bit different. We're going to try and use this boat exactly as an owner would use it. The boat in question is a Windy 27 Solano, and this one is fitted with the most powerful 430 horsepower V8 petrol engine. So we're going to take it out, we're going to have a good play off the needles, and then blat across to Poole Harbour, where we'll cruise around the harbour and try and use it exactly as an owner would use it, and then blast back all in the space of a day. So let's get out there, see how it goes. We've come out of the river, through the Solent, blasted out to the needles, and I have to admit I couldn't resist having a bit of a play. With 430 horsepower on tap, you've got a lot of performance. And I think that's the most striking thing initially, is just how much it carries on accelerating. You get to 40 knots and think, well, we must be nearly there. Put the throttle down and it just carries on going. The hull itself, very nice, deep V hull. Keep it nice and flat, and it will absolutely cut through the waves perfectly. It's not a big boat, it's only 27 foot, so if you catch it wrong you might get the odd slap off the chines themselves, but if you keep it flat it will just cruise straight through everything, and we had an enormous amount of fun catching some really quite big air off some of the rollers and the wake of a camera boat we were using just now. But it always flew straight, always landed nicely, and now we're going to head off to Poole and use it more as a cruising boat rather than a sports boat that we have been so far. Well, we've left the needles behind and we're now tracking across towards Old Harry Rocks and Poole. We had a bit of a lumpy patch just over the overfalls where we had to slow to about 20 knots, but now we're in slightly calmer water. We've got a sort of 10-11 knot breeze right on the nose, and it's still a little lumpy, but we can happily maintain a cruising speed of 25-30 knots, and it's really perfectly doable. It's slightly deceptive. You kind of forget that you're only in a 27-foot boat, because really once the hull is nice and flat and cutting through the waves, it's as comfortable as many boats of sort of 30-35 foot. And we're now doing, well, 25-26 knots. We can easily take it up to 30 if you can hang on. And now we're doing 30 knots, and it's just cruising along very comfortably. It's arguably slightly more comfortable at 30 knots. So I think we're going to make it across this sort of 12-mile gap in a matter of minutes. One of the joys of having a 27-foot boat is you can creep into places that you wouldn't risk going in a much bigger boat. So we've come across all the way from Lymington, and now we've just been cruising around Poole Harbour, and the tides, particularly at this state of tide, which is fairly low, you get depths of around 1.5 metres. We've even dropped below 1 metre at times. But because you're on a relatively small boat with a stern drive you can lift up, I've been perfectly confident snaking through the little alleyways and channels, coming around the back of the islands, and you get to experience a very different side of boating. What I like about the windy Solano is that it's not just a sports boat, it's a proper little weekend cruiser. So the way the whole thing has been set up, it's here to be used. You've got a helm seat and the actual helm position locks in very nicely and the wind comes up over the screen. You have got a little bolster, so you can flick it up and stand at the helm. But to be honest, it just feels more natural seating, even if you're just sat on the bolster. You've got the throttle exactly where you need it and the nice helm right in front of you, no stretch at all. It all just is the correct shape to sit and drive comfortably. Got these nice little toggle switches which take care of everything. A little bit more interesting than the usual Volvo plastic switches. A nice touchscreen display, and you have got the backup of analog dials. But it's not just the helm that works. You've also got a really usable little cabin down here. So you've got steps up through the screen to reach the deck. And again, really nice, solid, chunky build quality with these grab rails all the way around, give you a little bit of extra security. And then down here, you've got a nice little cuddy. You've got a proper double bed tucked into the bow, but most importantly of all, you've got a usable heads compartment. Sure, you can't stand up, but it is private, it's comfortable, it's a proper sea toilet, and it's really what you need for the weekend. A little bit of storage space, not a great deal, but you have got a lot of storage in the cockpit, and I'll show you some of that now too. The cockpit has a very nice sociable layout. You've got these two helm seats, both of which swivel to face in and make more of a group seating arrangement. You've got seats on both sides of the cockpit. This aft bench is particularly clever because, as well as a nice supportive backrest, it slides all the way back and you've got a nice sunbed when you need it. And then under here gives you fantastic access to the engine, in this case the big V8, but also you've got a dedicated slot for the table, leg and the nice wooden top. And further down here you've got a bin for your fenders with separate access through a little hatch in the deck, and then a large canopy that just swings up on gas supported struts, and then you've got shelter for the whole of the cockpit too. Very nice, neat, simple system, and everything on gas struts to make it easier. And then there's a load of storage around here too. There's a little fridge icebox underneath this part of the deck here. You've got big access to the fuel tank, again proper stainless steel. Everything is always very nicely built on a windy. Storage under both of these seats. Got a nice bin in there, all nicely lined. Another one in there. And then again, I think you need to lift that up to the final locker. So again, access to the tanks, but there's a little bit more storage on top. So you can get to absolutely everything you need to, whether it's access to the tanks, whether it's storage for your fenders, the table, and the whole arrangement of the cockpit. It's all designed to be a nice, usable, sociable boat. Even the stern platform has a few features. So we've got a bathing ladder here, and crucially, nice little handholds either side of it to help you get out of the water. And then there's a wet locker here for throwing your lines or even a damp wetsuit. You can get a ski pole, it's small enough to ski behind. And of course, nice integrated cleats on either side, which match up with these grab rails everywhere you look for hanging fenders. It's just a really nicely thought out and very well built boat. Well, hopefully, as you can see behind me, we've made it to Poole. We're in Town Quay and we've put the boat through its paces today. We've done a bit of everything. We've played about in the rough stuff off the Needles. We've cruised at a steady 30 knots across the Studland Bay. We've done some performance testing under the cliffs and got about 46, 47 knots out of it in the flat. We've tickled around the back of the harbour, taking advantage of its low draft to make sure we can sneak in between the islands and along the shallow channels. And now we've come into a marina where we could very comfortably settle down for the night in that little cabin. And I think what stands out about this boat is not just the fact that it's particularly fast or a particularly great handling boat. It's one of those superb all-rounders. It does everything. You can go the best part of 50 knots, you can cruise in it. It's beautifully built, it's very well thought through, and it just works as one of those boats. So if you don't need a bigger boat, and arguably you can have more fun in a boat like this, then it's very hard to see a better solution than this little windy Solano 27. The starting price for a boat like this is about £170,000. This particular one has got a lot of optional extra equipment on, and brand new it's about 200,000, but it's so nicely built you wouldn't really know it. This is actually a few months old, a few hours on the clock, and now is being sold for 165,000. And frankly, if you want a terrific all-round package that will look after you, do a bit of everything, still have a lot of fun, it's very hard to see a better boat than this.